Welcome back to another NoCode.Tech video, and in this one we're going to be looking at the basics of Adalo. Now, if you haven't heard of Adalo before, it is an app builder that lets you build native mobile apps or desktop web apps, and importantly versus some of its competitors, Adalo's apps, because they're native, can actually be made available in the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. Now, what we'll be trying to get across in these videos is just a basic overview of how Adalo works, and I'll be trying to relay that in terms of the 4 no-code pillars that we talked about in our no-code fundamentals series. If you haven't checked that out already, I recommend giving it a go. But as a quick reminder, we're going to be looking at how you can build an interface in Adalo, so UI and UX. We'll be looking at how you can set up your database, how you can put together workflows, and how you can make use of APIs and integrations. So when you first start in Adalo, you'll get a screen that looks a little bit like this, and you can immediately choose either a native mobile app or a desktop web app. You can't build both at once. If you're going to build a mobile app, you've got to build that. If you also want a web app, then you'll have to build that separately. But the good news is Adalo will let you share data between those apps so that your user ends up getting the same experience. So I'm going to just click next. And immediately Adalo is going to give me a variety of different templates I can choose from. You get most of the same options for the web app as well. I'm just going to go with blank, we'll keep it simple. And then immediately I'm asked to put some details in about my app. So we just call this no code demo app. And one of the cool things that Adalo will do is, rather than you having to specify colours for every little kind of element, it will essentially let you pick your main colour and a secondary colour. Now, you can pick them, and every time you put a component in, it's going to keep the theme mostly the same, but you can change either the branding later on, or you can mess around with the colours of individual components. Anyway, let's just go with we'll go with black as our primary colour. We'll keep the yellow as a secondary colour. There's a few advanced options in here. Like I say, if you want to use your database with another Adalo app, you can do that. But for now, let's go create an app and see what happens. So immediately we end up in an interface with a nice big canvas here, and I can zoom in and zoom out of that on my trackpad. But essentially I start out with 3 different screens. Now, we talked about previously in our fundamentals course that you have this concept of screens or pages. Well, in Adalo, because we're building an app, Adalo calls them screens, and essentially any screen that you create is going to show up in this canvas and you can scroll amongst them all. Now, most of what happens in Adalo takes place on this left-hand bar. We've got a few options here. So if I want to immediately start building my interface, I can look at all the various different components I've got. I can add images, forms, buttons, etc. And we'll come back to that in a second. Down the left-hand side, I can also change the branding. That's what I was referring to earlier. So I can look at things like the default background colour, the default text colour. And you'll notice, because I've set my primary colour to black, all of these bars at the top, these login buttons all look black as well. If I was to go and change that to orange, for example, then they would change as well. I'll set that back to black for now. You can also mess around with fonts, a few other bits and pieces in there. We've got a menu for adding various different screens. We've got our database, and we've got various different settings that we can set up here as well. One of the cool things you can do clearly with Adalo is you can publish to Android, you can publish to iOS. You can also publish as a progressive web app. If you haven't heard that term before, it's essentially a web app that a user can save to their home screen. So it acts just like an app, and it looks like an app and it feels like an app, but it's not a native app that you would download in the App Store. It's something that you would just save. We'll mess about with all that later, but in the meantime, one other cool thing just pointed out about Adalo is these analytics. Now, at any time during your kind of app building process here, your app building process with Adalo, you can hit preview, and it's going to come up and show you your screen. So you'll notice that sign up screen matches the sign up screen I had in the canvas. Up the top right hand corner here, I can change to see, for example, what does this look like on an iPad Pro? Or what's it going to look like on an iPhone SE, which is a small one. So you can mess around with that, and Adalo will automatically scale everything depending on what mobile device your app is ultimately being used on. So let's just kind of show you a little bit more. Now, say we wanted to go ahead and we'll create a new screen first of all, just to show you what that looks like. So immediately I've got all these different templates that I can choose from, or I can just hit a blank screen. But there's a ton of different stuff in here, and one of the ones that I quite like is this pre-made welcome screen. So I'm just going to call that welcome, very inventive. And if I scroll out a little bit, now the screen is just going to show up there. I can move that to wherever I like. and I can even go in and start changing details about the interface. So immediately you'll notice again there's more stuff happening on the left here. When I click that, I get a bunch of options, like text, etc. If I click this, then I get a button that I can play around with. There's a lot of different options in here, so if I want to go ahead and change that, I can say, welcome to my new app, for example. And there's all sorts of things I can do in there. I can change the font, I can set it's bold or unbold, can change the size, etc. All sorts of stuff I can do. And you'll notice I also have this thing down here called click actions. Now we'll talk about actions in a later lesson, because actions are essentially Adalo's answer to workflows, but you can use actions on almost every element, so even a piece of text can be clickable. The other thing that I can do in Adalo, if I zoom in a little bit and let you see, now I've selected the image here, I've selected the text, I can move that up and down however I like. I can move it really wherever. There's no real barriers in Adalo. You can literally put something wherever you want. You can make it as big or as small as you like and play around with it. And thankfully these guidelines come up, so if I'm trying to center this, I can try and just move it and it will tell me, okay, it's in line with the home on this screen, or if I was to put it in the middle, it will show me where it's in line with the middle, etc. So the guardrails, although you've got a kind of blank canvas and you can drag anything to wherever you want it to be, the guardrails do kind of help you just keep everything aligned and looking good. So if we go back in and look at our components this time, now we have got a ton of stuff in here. If you paid attention to the UI and UX pillar lesson, I looked at lots of different components that are really common amongst all apps ever, whether it's no code or actual code. And Adalo has a lot of them too. We've got forms, we've got buttons, text, app bars, simple list. An app bar is probably actually a counterexample, because app bar is something you won't have seen before. It will be really, really common in a mobile app, so you'll have seen it on your own apps, but you won't have seen it in a no-code tool, most likely, because Adalo has all these little kind of custom elements that work for a mobile app but are rarely seen in a web app, for example. So you've got an action button. If I click that, I can put that down there. That would usually go in the corner of an app. Again, very rare to see that on a website. You do get it occasionally. The app bar being an obvious one, although we've already got it there. And then there's various different things, like for example, one of the most important are tab bar. So a tab bar is sort of the equivalent of a nav bar that you would get on a website. You've got various different options here, and what Adalo will let you do is essentially for each little tab, like home, search, etc., you'll be able to say click on that and that will link to another screen. We'll play with that in a little second. But as you can see, whenever I put things like a button on here, I've got all these different options I can play with. I can change the icon in that, I can make that a timer. I don't know why I've done that, but I could. I can change the fill color, for example. I could make that a black button. If I pull a button in here, I've suddenly got all these different options, so I can change the text again. But Adalo does this thing where you can change the type, so you can see right now how that button looks right there. Now if I click that and I select outline button, you get a slightly different look. And if I wanted to make a clickable piece of text, a link, then I can just make a text button. And if I zoom in a little bit to show you, you can see that's got nothing around it, but I'll change it back for now. So Adalo just, again, comes pre-built with all these really, really easy styles. And, you can kind of see, I've not put a lot of effort in here. I'm just dragging and dropping random things. But if I take that button away, this interface doesn't look all that bad. Clearly it's not designed to do anything, but Adalo's just really good at proportion and everything. Takes care of a lot of the branding for you. You've got the tab bar. Yes, you sacrifice a little bit of flexibility, but even this week, as I'm currently filming, Adalo are bringing out tons of new design settings, so it's just something that's going to continue to improve over time. So let's do a couple other things. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this welcome screen, because I just want to show you one last thing. So delete that. And what I'm going to show you is how page linking works. So one of the important things to know about a mobile app versus a website. On a website, you can go in, you can go up here and you can type in whatever you like. So if I want to go to a different page, I can type it in and get there. Now, not every user is going to do that, but the option is there. On a mobile app, however, I can't do that. I can't type in specific screens. All I can do is click the buttons that are given to me. So if I want to go to a search screen or a team screen or a profile screen, that's brilliant. I can click all of that. But if I want to go to a screen that is not currently showing on here, then you, as the app builder, have to create a way for that to happen. Maybe I go to one screen and there's a button that takes me to another screen, whatever it might be. But that flow is really, really important. And so as a result, Adalo has this concept of linking screens together. So when I hit first tab, second tab on this left hand here, so that's going to let me kind of access each sub element. So if I go to my tab bar and I go to the second bar, I've got search. Now what I can do, I can hit add action and I can go to link, and I can tell that to link me to a new screen. So let's say I wanted a search screen. Let's see if we've got a little template for that. No, we don't. Let's just go in app bar. So if I hit create screen, I've just created one that calls search. Now you'll see it's got this little arrow between it, and essentially what that's saying is when I click here, it's going to link to this search page. And there's a bunch of different things that I can do around about how the transition looks like. You know, does the page slide away? Does it slide down? Does it push? Whatever it might be. But you can kind of worry about that detail later on. It's all about the aesthetics of it. The main thing is now when I click that search button, it's going to take me to that page, and I can demonstrate that to you. If I just go ahead and do a bit of text, so type welcome to the search page, and I'm just going to try and center that text over here on the left just to give you an idea of how this all works. Now the reason I've done that, let's make that really big as well. Let's make that, oh geez, it's not that big. Yeah, that'll do. The reason I've done that is just so I can show you when we've got to this page. So I'm now going to go and hit preview, and we'll see what it looks like to actually spin this app up. The first thing I'm going to have to do is create a new account. So I will do Niall at NoCode.Tech, and I'll do a password, which will be 123, and then I'll do my name, which is Niall. It's not really my full name, but it'll do. If I log in or hit sign up, now that's going to automatically create a user in my database, but look what happens. So we immediately see the screen, we've got search, we've got team, etc. If I hit search, it's going to link me to that page. Now interestingly, if I hit back, it's going to take me back as well. You can always configure that back button, but essentially that is how you get your flow. You link pages together, the user can then press back to go back between them, and that will take you to whatever page you've got. Now, as we don't want to save that password, as we go through this exercise and as we sort of play with actions, etc., one of the things that becomes quite important is when you're accessing your data, which data is on which screen. So typically what will happen is any data that I have available on, say, my home screen, when I link to a new page, that data becomes available on the new page. So for example, when you're doing magic text and all that kind of thing, your variables, which we'll talk about in the next lesson, you can pull all that kind of stuff through. You can start to think about how, you know, data goes from one screen to the other, and it just becomes really, really fluid. It's a really impressive system. Now, that might all sound a bit confusing, so we're going to look at that in the next lesson where we talk about data.